Hey everyone, my name is Meg, I'm 18. Have you noticed weird habits you have? Maybe slightly biting your lip or playing with a pen in your hand? I wish I had habits like that, but mine is kind of different. I chew on myself. It all started a couple of months ago. The school announced that we were going to have an important test, and if you didn't pass, you could have been left behind to repeat the year over again. My grades weren't the best, so the test could have saved me or become my grave. I decided to take the bull by the horns and just started to prepare really hard. Since I never really paid attention too much in my studying, I imagined that it would be easy. I remembered everything at a glance. A week before the exam, our class had a mock test, like a quiz. I had absolute confidence in my knowledge. When I got the results, I was stunned. I almost didn't get a single answer correct. I was covered in a cold sweat. I developed the feelings of fear and helplessness. How could I fail? What was I doing wrong? I didn't prepare well enough. There was only 1 week left until the real test. I stocked up with chocolate snacks, energy drinks, locked myself in the room, started studying. Do you remember how you were getting ready for the most important test in your life? How you were feeling? What tricks did you use to succeed and memorize the materials better? Did you ever cheat? That time, cheating seemed like a good idea. But everything was different this time around. I was constantly shaking. I couldn't think about anything except how I might fail the test and have to stay back in the same grade. How would I tell my parents? Friends? All of a sudden, I could taste this metal in my mouth. I couldn't figure out why at first. Then it dawned on me. That's when my nerves got a hold of me. I started biting my cuticles around my nails. Oh my God, I chewed them until they were bleeding. After I treated my wounds, I looked closer and saw that they were very, very deep. You could almost see flesh. But at that moment, I suddenly felt calm, something I hadn't felt in a while. I continued with studying. I closed up my day on a positive note after I took a trial test and passed it. Everything repeated itself the next day. When I was reading through some of the material I needed, I just couldn't figure out rereading it over and over again. Like a maniac, I felt that bloody taste in my mouth, and this time I decided not to pay attention, just let myself chew all I wanted. And voila, I was able to learn my stuff. Another finger paid the price. But who cares? It wasn't such a high price for my peace of mind. The last couple of days went as followed. Studying, trial quizzes, chewing on my fingers. The day of the test was here. I took my spot, glanced at the exam questions, and had an awful realization. I couldn't remember any of my answers. I was panicking, but I froze and couldn't move. A limb at the same time. Fear and hatred towards myself overwhelmed me at that moment. And just like that, I calmed down. I felt something warm inside my mouth and the metal taste again. I started chewing my fingers, that hardly healed again. And you know what? I passed the test, and I got 100%. My parents were so proud of me. It was a big surprise for them that I passed. My dad was joking that I might need to apply to Harvard. Have you ever felt that victorious in your life? I did that time. In all my 18 years, I've never been praised that much. It felt amazing, not gonna lie. Friends at school became really nice and respectful towards me, that I had goals and was going somewhere, succeeded perfectly, but I was the only one who really knew the price I paid for that. All my fingers were chewed up raw. I could hardly hold utensils while eating without dropping them from the pain I had, but it was all worth it. A month went by, I kept going to school, there were no more test stresses, and I just kept approaching my graduation with a light heart. The time came for the last final exam at school. It was more of a joke, it was impossible not to pass, and it didn't matter about my grade either. Piece of cake. I thought I'm not even gonna prepare. That night when I got home and opened my computer, I was overcome by the same feelings of fear and despair. I could almost hear a voice in my head that kept saying to me, "You won't pass. You're gonna fail." I was kind of scared. I had this crazy fear of failing, and all of a sudden, it stopped. I felt warm and tasted metal in my mouth. I was biting skin off of my finger. My body was telling me to prepare for the test. Am I a hostage to myself? I started studying, but tried to keep my cool. I drank calming tea and water, found a relaxation, rhythmical breath technique online, and even tried to meditate. So what do you do to calm down when you're stressed out? Do you have a go-to method to deal with anxiety? Don't forget to leave your comments in for this video. By the end of the day, I didn't even have any anxiety anymore. Was it a success? Did it look like I found a defense against that habit? Looks like I'm not going to chew myself raw anymore. I think I'll pass the damn test. And again, I got anxiety just thinking about all of it. I tried taking deep breaths to calm down, but it was in vain. I looked at my fingers that looked terrible by then. They were covered in fresh wounds and bite marks. But I had no choice. I started compulsively biting non-existent cuticles. I kept biting off little pieces of my own flesh while licking off the blood that was pooling up. And again, it did help me. There it was, the cure for my fear and nervous breakdown and all the panic attacks. It was time to admit it. I only had a little bit of time before the test, so I decided to think straight and have a reasonable approach to the situation. I had a week left until the test, meaning 7 fingers. I left 3 on my right hand so I'd be able to hold a pen. I abbreviated the days of the week on the rest of the fingers. 1 finger a day. That was a good start. I started studying without even letting my finger leave my mouth. For a few consecutive hours, I chewed on it and sucked on my left hand's thumb in order not to lose it. At the end of the day, I was terrified, but I took my finger out of my mouth and peeped at it. It was a gruesome sight. I was ashamed of that shriveled blue-colored appendage that I couldn't even move. It didn't disgust me, however. I'm trying to fight with my issue as hard as I can. I only had 6 days left and then it'd be all over. I spent the rest of the days in the same manner. Everything went according to the plan, if you could even phrase it that way. 1 finger a day. But 2 days before the test, I got my anxiety back. Why? I'm chewing on my finger right now. Anxiety that I didn't have for the last 5 days came right back. I was caught again in the vortex of fear. I couldn't let that happen. I needed to get out of it. I moved on to chewing the rest of my fingers, and when that wasn't enough, I went back to the already chewed up ones. There was blood that was like slowly dripping off my hands, onto my t-shirt, pants, notebooks, books. Everything was red. I don't remember my fear disappearing. I just remember that I was really thirsty. There was orange juice in the fridge. I need juice. I got up, and just like a zombie, not even able to walk straight, I went down to the kitchen. I opened the fridge and gulped down the juice. Needless to say, my parents were in the kitchen at that moment and were shocked and said nothing. I didn't really notice them or the blood trail that was behind me, but then it was dark. I fainted. I woke up on a hospital bed. I was told I lost consciousness because of the blood loss. Well, it seemed about right. I drove myself into that terrible state. While in the hospital, I kept thinking about what happened. I bet I looked like a fool. My fingers were hurting, and of course it was a lesson to me. Doctor said that as soon as the IV would be finished, I'd be let out. But the parents came in with a different doctor. They told me that I was being sent to the psych ward for treatment. Are you serious? I'm fine. I have a test coming up that I've been preparing for. You can't do this to me. I tried to fight them off, but the male nurses quickly restrained me. A few minutes of treatment and rehab followed. Only after I completed the treatment, I realized what I was doing to myself and how bizarre I behaved. I guess stress affects every person differently. I, in order to calm down, was chewing on my fingers. Somebody could simply snap their fingers or stomp their feet. The one thing I know for sure now is if you don't fight your bad habits, they'll take over your life sooner than later. Now I'm trying to stay away from stress. I dropped out of school to avoid testing. Instead, I got a job at my dad's store. I'm often asked why I'm wearing gloves in the summer when it's really hot. I joke that I'm a germaphobe. In fact, I'm scared to suddenly start chewing on my fingers again. Or them seeing. I hope it'll never happen. Thanks for watching the clip until the end. Do you have any habits like that? Comment please, and also click like and subscribe to the channel.
Hi, I'm Tammy, and I'm 13 years old. Have you ever felt like you swallowed something alive? As if you have something inside you threatening your life? This story happened to me, and the feeling of it still haunts me. Watch this video to the end and find out what will happen to a person if they swallow a poisonous snake. My parents devoted their entire life to biology, so I was interested in exotic animals and insects since childhood. What ordinary children were afraid of were my favorite toys. And instead of bedtime stories, I like to listen to encyclopedias and scientific work of my mom and dad. I always wanted to have an exotic animal at home, but my parents were against it, saying that it could be dangerous and that they had enough of them at work. Until recently, my father was given a small and rare poisonous snake for his birthday. I was thrilled. Of course, I immediately wanted to play with it, but my dad stopped me. He placed the snake in the home terrarium and said that it should not be touched during the adaptation. And he forbade me to take it without permission because it was poisonous. I was upset, but still, I couldn't stand it, and my curiosity took over. Have you ever disobeyed your parents? The next day after my parents left for work, I snuck into my dad's office and played with the snake. I decided to name him Tony, so in secret, I continued to visit Tony every day. But over time, I got bored playing with it alone, and I wanted to show off the snake to my best friend Carl. I decided to prank him, and I really thought it would be fun, but my plan failed. We sat and played our favorite game. I told Carl I was going to get us something to eat, let Tony out of the terrarium, and carried it to my room without being seen. I thought Carl would get scared. We would laugh together and play with the snake. But the prank got out of control. When Carl saw the snake on his leg, he jumped up in horror, screamed loudly. His face turned completely white. He fell to the floor and he began to suffocate. Honestly, I didn't even know what to do, but it was necessary to act quickly. I found a brown bag in the kitchen, ran to Carl, and he started breathing into it, slowly coming to himself. I gave him a glass of water, he drank it, and started yelling at me. It turned out that he couldn't stand snakes, lizards, and all the alike. As a child, he was even allergic to them. He accused me of knowing about it and setting it up on purpose. But I had no idea that Carl had such a fear. We had a big fight. Carl took offense at me and slammed the door. I returned the snake to the terrarium before my parents noticed and went to my room. I was very sad that we had a fight because this has never happened in all of our friendship, so I had nightmares the next night. I was almost asleep, and in my sleep, I thought that something cold was lying on my stomach and beginning to crawl to my head. It crawled right into my mouth, and I couldn't even move. I woke up the next morning in a cold sweat. I was afraid, and what I saw and felt in the dream seemed very real. I was very scared and quickly ran to look at the terrarium, but it was empty. My legs began to shake, and I clutched my stomach and couldn't move. Was there a little snake inside me now? Just thinking about it made me feel sick, and I ran to the bathroom. Apparently, I didn't close the lid properly yesterday, and Tony just crawled out of the terrarium and into my mouth. Even in the morning, I felt something moving on my lips. It was just awful. I couldn't sleep, walk, or even eat. And it always seemed to me that there was a chill in my esophagus. Something alive. It was as if something cold-blooded had crawled all over it. More and more thoughts came into my head, and I couldn't handle them alone. So the next day at school, I found Carl, asked him for forgiveness, and told him what had happened to me. He was so shocked, as if he had quarreled with me. He started thinking about how to solve this problem. He was worried about me. It was nice, but it looked like he knew about it. I decided not to attach importance to his reaction. Carl told me to go to the doctor right away, started saying that it was very serious and we couldn't solve it ourselves. I burst into tears and said that I would never go to the doctor. I needed a friend's help. Are you afraid of doctors and hospitals? And then we remembered that Carl's mother was a biologist, and she had a very rare book on cold-blooded animals at home. Carl calmed me down, and we ran to his house right after school. We had to do everything before his mother arrived. We snuck into her office and started looking for the right book, and I was getting worse and very sick to my stomach. Carl was worried because his mom's office was a restricted area in the house, and he was always rushing me. But I couldn't move any faster. I was constantly dizzy from fear. Unexpectedly for us, the handle of the front door turned. Carl's mom came home early, and she found us in her office. She started yelling at us, and especially at Carl, and even threatened house arrest. But I couldn't let that happen. So I gathered my thoughts and told her everything. She hesitated and seemed less angry, and I thought she calmed down a little too quickly. Maybe she was just worried about me. She said that most likely I need to be examined by a doctor because the snake could damage my esophagus or even poison me. And since the snake was poisonous, it could dissolve in the stomach and the poison would get directly into my blood. It only made me feel worse. I knew it was a lost cause. Everything went too far. I would have to tell my parents. Carl's mother quickly arranged an appointment, and half an hour later, we were on our way to the hospital. I felt worse every minute. I blamed myself for everything. I lost a friend, hid everything from my father, and violated his ban. She said that she would have to tell my parents, but I decided that I would tell them myself. Meanwhile, my stomach was turning. I really thought that the snake poison was already in my blood. I was constantly sick in the car, and I barely made it to the hospital. I was already sitting in line, looking pale and scared, when Carl's mother said that I would probably get a gastroscopy, and if necessary, they would perform emergency surgery. I sat in the corridor and was trembling with fear. I was supposed to be called in for a checkup any minute. And then I saw my parents. They looked very serious and even angry, so I couldn't stand it. I jumped out of my chair and excused myself to my mom and dad. The fear of the examination, the operation, and the whole situation overwhelmed me even more. I immediately told my parents everything. And when I finished and opened my eyes, I saw my dad smiling gently at me. At first, I didn't understand why, and he showed me a jar with a snake. I was shocked. Did I just dream it up and almost drive myself crazy? How could this happen? Suddenly, Dad took the snake out of the jar and held it out to me, and I immediately jumped back, afraid that it might bite me and inject poison. But my father showed me that the snake had no teeth. I didn't understand what was going on, and my parents admitted that I was just being pranked, almost as much as I had pranked Carl. My parents said they wanted me to learn this lesson and never disobey them again for my own safety. Yes, it's hard not to learn. It turned out that Carl had told them all about my joke. I asked where had the snake from the terrarium gone. It turned out that my dad just took it to his lab. I was so glad I hadn't swallowed the snake that I forgot my parents and Carl had taught me a valuable lesson. I was surprised that I didn't notice anything, but apparently my imagination did everything for me, and I couldn't think of anything but the snake. I knew it was all for my own good. I could have hurt Carl with my joke, and my stupidity and curiosity could play a trick on me. Now I avoid my father's office. I try not to stick my nose and hands into everything. And for this behavior, my parents promised to give me my own terrarium with a water snake. If you liked the video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. Be careful with your imagination, and have a good day! Hi, my name is Sarah and I'm 20 years old. Tell me, have you ever eaten live shellfish or insect as a delicacy? How would you feel if something like this was eating you from the inside out? No, I'm not crazy. It's just that my pursuit of fame and money led me to do something rash that could have cost me my life. At the age of 18, my sister and I moved to New York to attend college. We lived in a small town in Pennsylvania, so there wasn't much prospect for the future, except to stay on my parents' farm and help with it, with the hope of one day inheriting this small piece of land. So the decision to move was made unanimously. We went to different colleges. My sister had been interested in literature since school days, so she chose journalism. I preferred the natural sciences, so I chose medicine. It was hard at first. A big city requires a lot of money, so each of us got a job. I became a sales assistant at a fashion boutique, and my sister was a bartender at a pretty popular club. We studied, worked, had fun, talked about everything, and enjoyed our new life. However, after 2 years of our life in New York, something happened that changed my life forever. What difficulties did you experience when moving to a new city? Loss of housing? Loss of work? I'd rather face it. One day, when I got home, I noticed my sister lying unconscious on the floor. At first, I thought she was pulling my leg, but I quickly realized she wasn't. I tried to bring her to her senses, but she wouldn't come to. And she was burning up. I was scared and called an ambulance, and they took her to the hospital. There, the doctor said that my sister had a severe form of pneumonia and that she urgently needed treatment. But there was one problem. The meds she needed were very expensive, and I didn't have that kind of money. I didn't want to bother my parents, and our family wasn't so rich. But what should I do? My sister was getting worse and worse, and the necessary amount was not available. I didn't always have enough money to pay for an apartment working as a sales assistant, and it was ridiculous to think about paying for my sister's treatment with this money. It was necessary to solve this problem quickly, and I decided to find a second job, and if necessary, even a third. However, where could I get a job to earn enough money quickly? And so I searched for a new job on the internet. I came across a vacancy for a model. They paid a lot, and I only had to pass the contest. It sounded dubious and suspicious, as typical ads of this type, quick earnings from $1,000 a day, but I didn't have much choice. And what are you willing to do to save someone close to you? I was ready for anything. I passed the contest easily. Even at school, I was the main beauty, and with age, I only got better. After a couple successful fashion shows, I got the right amount of money, paid for my sister's treatment, and she got better. However, I wasn't going to give up modeling. I was invited to fashion shows more and more often. Well-known brands offered to star in ads for their products, and the contracts got bigger and bigger. Money and popularity turned my head. I quit my old job and didn't go to college. One day, I got a call saying that if I kept missing class, I'd be expelled. In response, I told them to back off and said that I did not care about them and studying. I was invited to all the fashion shows, paid a lot of money, and my appearance was worshipped. Isn't that the dream of all girls? I came to a big city to conquer, and it obeyed me. That's what I thought at the time. But my happiness did not last long. One day, when I went to another show, I saw a model I didn't know who was wearing my outfit. I started to find out what was going on here, and it turned out that now she will be performing in my place. But how? This was supposed to be my finest hour. I was told that her appearance was currently more interesting to them, and she weighed only 40 kilograms. And for me, there were only a couple of performances left, and my career was over. I couldn't believe it. My money, my fame, my popularity. All this was taken from me by some upstart who came from nowhere and took my place. At the beginning of my career, a familiar model told me about a friend who sold pills with the larvae of special cockroaches for weight loss. At the moment, I just laughed. But right now, I didn't see any other way out. I decided that I would pay any price, give anything to get my dream job back. Did you do anything stupid in a difficult situation? Did you think that you were in a hopeless situation? I was disgusted because I hated insects. I was shaking, crying, and couldn't make up my mind for a long time. Although I had laughed at the idea that there was a larvae in the pills. Now I was sure it was true. Gathering my courage and holding back the urge to vomit, I swallowed first one tablet, then the second, and so on for the 6 pieces, thinking that if you took a large amount, then the effect would come faster. And so it turned out, 2 weeks later, I lost 8 kilograms. They took me back, saying I looked even better than I needed to. Only one thing bothered me. My sister used to tell me that I was pale and that I looked sick. But what did she know? Fame and career did not escape her. I told her abruptly that she was just jealous of me. I had achieved everything myself. How wrong I was. On the crucial day of the show, when my modeling fate was to be decided, I felt a strong pain in my stomach and nausea. I couldn't understand what was going on. I started digging in my backpack for a cure for the pain. And then I remembered about the weight loss pills that I had a month ago. What if the cockroach larvae grew, survived, and now lives in my stomach? I got scared. Why today? Why, with me, did I sacrifice a little for my success? These thoughts did not let me go. But more than that, I was just shaking. What was I going to do with the insect in my stomach? What if there were more of them and they ate me? Should I go to the hospital? No, I decided that the price I had paid for all my torment should not be wasted. And I took every ounce of willpower, neglected the pain in my stomach, and went to the podium. Halfway through it, the pain in my stomach went away, and just when I was happy about it, my head started to spin. Everything went blurry in my eyes, and I lost consciousness. I woke up in the hospital. I didn't understand what was happening, but the pain in my stomach was even worse than it had been before. The doctor stood next to me. I immediately began to cry and told him about how I wanted to lose weight, got pills with larvae, and that now probably cockroaches lived in me and slowly ate me. The doctor looked at these pills, laughed, and explained everything to me. It turned out that there were no larvae in them. They were just phonies, and my stomach hurt because I hadn't eaten anything for almost a month and had been on a strict diet. My body was exhausted. So no one was eating me from the inside, and in general, there were no cockroaches that eat fat. And even if they did exist, they wouldn't survive in a human stomach. I was ashamed. I fell for this nonsense, lost my common sense because of my selfishness. A few hours later, my sister came to see me. When she saw me, she started to cry and begging me to quit modeling and stop killing myself. In that moment, I remembered how worried I had been about my sister when she was in the hospital, and that I had only become a model to save her, not for the sake of my career. Was that kind of career worth sacrificing yourself and your loved ones for? A week later, I got better. I quit modeling, went back to college, and got a job as a hospital nurse. My relationship with my sister improved, and we began to appreciate each other even more than before. And even though I had made a mistake that put our relationship at risk, we are now doing well and happy. I wish you not to make such mistakes and take care of your health. Like this video and tell your friends about it. Subscribe to our channel because there are many more interesting stories waiting for you here. Goodbye!